right, everybody, thanks for joining us. Many of you first heard of our next speaker when he was Mikey's stunt double in the original Life cereal commercial. He went on to be the cowboy in the Village People, and he eventually started a karate/Essbase dojo in Rosita before deciding that apparently wearing his hat was his true calling. Starring in his own version of MythBusters, round of applause for the man in the hat, the beard of the EPM community, Mr. Edward Roske.
Thank you. Allie, of all the introductions I've ever received, that was by far the most recent. Thank you, everyone, for Why Move to Oracle Cloud, busting the migration myths.
Please don't try anything that you're about to see us do at home, ever.
Bit of a disclaimer.
The manufacturer and retailer assume no responsibility for any use or application of this product in violation with any applicable law. Before installing this product, please check your state and local laws and regulations.
It's just a little bit quiet, Edward, just so you know.
Good to know. I have no idea how to make it louder, but good to know. Wait, let's try it again, just because that was a terribly important disclaimer.
The manufacturer and retailer assume no responsibility for any use or application of this product in violation with any applicable law. Before installing this product, please check your state and local laws and regulations. I'll save you some time. It's probably illegal.
Is that better, Allie?
That was perfect. Yes, could hear it clearly.
Awesome. So you're running an older version of Hyperion, and you hear about this new Oracle EPM Cloud, and you're thinking, should I implement it? You've heard Oracle EPM Cloud has some big benefits, but wait, could that actually be true? This sounds like a job for MythBusters. And if I had to do it all over again, I'd have grabbed Glenn Schwartzberg and put his head onto one of these, but I already did that to him for Cobra Kai on our session yesterday. If you have any questions during today, if something I say seems a little bit odd, well, that's probably just me. But if you want to validate if it's true or not, submit that through the Q&A. So look down there at the bottom of your screen. It says Q&A. Glenn will be monitoring that Q&A during the presentation and answering and or correcting everything that I say, as is his wont. I'm dubious, but it sounds like fun. So it's a tough job separating reality from things you've just heard, particularly when there are a whole lot of other competitive companies to Oracle that seem to love talking about all the problems at Oracle. And Oracle, in an interesting move, never chooses to defend themselves. So what I'm going to do today is help separate some of those myths that you've heard from other companies or that you've heard from Oracle themselves, that you've heard from speakers. What you're going to find is that some of this is actually valid. Some of it was valid and is no longer, and some of it just flat out is wrong. So I'm going to take all of my knowledge, everything that I've seen, and I'm going to correct some myths, some of which I created, by the way, because there were things that indeed used to be true and are now fiction.
On this episode of MythBusters.
On this episode of MythBusters, we will be addressing cloud myths, on-prem myths, cloud myths, everything related to the world of Hyperion. We're going to get started with myth number 1. interRel is the #1 consulting firm for implementing Oracle EPM solutions. I've heard people say the opposite, generally working for my competition. By the way, this is my way of framing the obligatory who is our company slide. We are Oracle's current reigning global business analytics partner of the year. We've won BI and or EPM partner of the year 5 times. We have been around longer than any other company in our space. We were actually created back in 1997 to be an Arbor Essbase partner, and we are still here, and we are still true to the community. Most of you know us by giving away lots and lots of free information. So this is not a one and done. If you're brand new to the Solutions Conference, go out to interRel.com, sign up for all of our many webcasts. We also have a couple hundred free videos out there. That's not an exaggeration. Go to epm.bi/videos to see all of those. You can also find things like our books are out there on Amazon. We put on regular conferences, regular webcasts. We even created a news agency, and not a joke, we have official press passes now at interRel Finance News. Go to interRel.com/updates and hear about more. I think we can conclusively say that was a remarkably brief commercial and totally confirmed #1 EPM firm. Okay, let's get on to the real content. So people have heard about the Oracle EPM Enterprise Bundle. And one of the things that they've heard is that when they go to the Oracle EPM Enterprise Bundle on the cloud, they get enterprise data management. And it used to cost $1.50 per record per month, which is $18 per record per year. And people said, wow, I can't believe they're just throwing this thing in. Well, a couple of clarifications. First of all, it doesn't come with EPM standard cloud. So if you get the standard version, the one that's $250 per user per month list price, that one does not have EDM. So number one, you've got to be on EPM Enterprise to use EPM. Number two, there is a 5,000 record limitation. It can be expanded for additional money. We have one customer that has a 600,000 member dimension that they're managing in enterprise data management. So all their hierarchies are centralized in it, and it pushes out to every application, no matter where it is. It pushes out, in their case, it pushes to the ERP, pushes to the data warehouse, does push to EPM applications. So there are no restrictions in terms of where you can send that data, but EPM Enterprise does come with a 5,000 record limitation. On that note, it's difficult to cross that barrier. The server, the instance, is essentially set up to handle a 5,000 record instance, which is great for an entity hierarchy, maybe a higher level product hierarchy, maybe your company hierarchy. Most companies have more than 5,000 records though on their chart of accounts. You have more than 5,000 accounts at any sort of Fortune 500 company. So if you know you're going to cross that level, it's a better idea to say you're going to cross it ahead of time, set it up as a separate EDM server with the per record cost kind of incurring. Otherwise, if you just stop at the 5,000, when you get to the 5,000, you're going to have to go stand up a brand new server and do a whole another ball game with licensing, and it's just a pain. So it is a myth that you can set it up without restrictions. So busted. Turns out there are restrictions. So got to be on enterprise. You are capped at 5,000 records. So this one has been getting around. I've got workforce planning on-prem, and it's not in 11.2. It just flat out doesn't exist. So I want to take it and lift and shift it to the cloud. To be clear, there are some on-prem application modules that cannot be migrated to Oracle EPM Cloud. A few of those. So what you're thinking is, wait a second, there's workforce in the cloud. I have workforce on-prem, there's workforce in the cloud. Why can I not lift and shift it up into that workforce application? It has to do with they rethought entirely how they do workforce planning. They rethought how they did CapEx, how they did project planning. The traditional on-prem modules were very much about having to use the whole thing. Like you had to just adopt pretty much wholesale how Oracle wanted you to do workforce planning. And if you tried to turn things off, it took a high price, but deservedly so, consultant to do it without breaking everything. Workforce planning in the cloud takes the entire opposite approach. It starts with nothing and lets you turn on what you want. So over time, you might start off with thinking, well, I really want to plan at the departmental level. Well, now I want to start planning by job code. And then later on, I want to start planning for corporate headquarters all the way down to the individual person, the headcount level. You can turn that on as you go. So because of that, there is no direct lift and shift from that on-prem world to the cloud world. There are a few things that you can't lift and shift, and I'm probably going to miss one. Hyperion Workforce Planning, Oracle Hyperion Capital Asset Planning, Project Financial Planning, Public Sector Planning and Budgeting. Migration of these applications is going to fail even if you removed the planning modules and the cubes from them, because there are business rules and there are forms that span cubes. So there's this myth out there, well, if I just lifecycle management an individual cube out, I can pull it back up. It's going to break. There are XREFs all over the place. Also, you're going to be unable to migrate any EPM architect, EPMA architected enabled planning applications. You're going to have problems with anything that uses ERP integrator, ERP, if you're still using that one. So there are some things that do lift and shift. You can lift and shift a custom planning application to the cloud. It can happen in a matter of minutes, not including testing. But workforce, as well as others one that I mentioned, yeah, busted. Can't do it. And it's a good thing, by the way. You don't want to replicate those old workforce and capital asset and project planning applications. This one has gotten around, so I'm going to dive into this one more than just one slide. You should stick with HFM because FCC doesn't have all the functionality that HFM has. To be clear, this was true at the beginning of when FCC launched, and somehow people that are saying it have not kept their information updated. One of the things that comes across a lot is, oh, I can't customize FCC. I have to use what's there. Well, yes, it actually has a lot of pre-built functionality that HFM doesn't, but you can customize it. That's all in there nowadays. So that pre-built functionality gets you head started. Things you used to have to write VB script for in HFM, things you still have to custom VB script if you're using a competing product out of the East Coast. That's all built in. Things like roll forwards, currency translation adjustment, KPIs and ratios. All the 90% of the things that companies custom wrote 90% of the time, it's all pre-built now. It does have a much better integrated user interface. HFM, and to a large extent that other competing company that's kind of HFM 11.5, it has a very antiquated interface, not so on FCC. It looks like a tablet. It is fully cloud, unlike HFM, but all those things that HFM did, consolidations, ad hoc reporting, even things you had to add on through financial close management, task management, supplemental data, account reconciliation, that's all there inside of FCC. There's also this myth out there that I'm going to run out of dimensionality. To be clear, unlike HFM, FCC was never architected to have a cap on number of dimensions. They give you a cap, but it is a soft cap. And by that, I mean, it can be raised. They give you that cap because if you're building a 14-dimensional financial consolidation application, you're probably putting data in there that really isn't relevant to closing your books. You're probably creating something that's more on the category of reporting and analysis, and they have other solutions for that. I'm doing it in things like Freeform to build. If you want to build a 26-dimensional cube, you can do that. Just do it over in the Freeform world. So there is a built-in cash flow movement, and that's all part of the base product. You can actually look back at the source of where that information came from. The configurable one is the hardest one to convince people of. All those things you used to custom build, net income going over to retained earnings, your CTA, your overrides, your cash flow, your KPIs, your out of balances, your allocations, all that's VB script. Still can't believe I'm having to say those words in 2020. It's VB script over in HFM. All those are now pre-built over there at FCC. But people go, okay, yeah, but what if I want to VB script something? I have some really great news for you. You can custom all you want. You can write those custom calculations. You can do minority interest in joint ventures. You can do your own custom allocations. But now you have the power of Essbase behind it. So instead of having to go learn VB script, you can either do it through Calc Manager, where it's just drag and drop a flowchart to write the calculation. Or if you really want to, and you go, you know what? I love custom coding. I miss VB script so much. You now have full access to Essbase Calc scripts. So you can do all of those custom calculations you have over on the FCC side. So despite what that one company keeps saying, sticking with HFM because FCC doesn't have all that functionality, that hasn't been true since 2018. Or as I like to say, that hasn't been true since pre-pandemic. Yes. Somebody the other day said 2016 called, and I'm like, oh my God, 2016 called, warn them, tell them not to come to 2020. But yes, good news, FCC in 2020, totally able to do all those HFM type things. Which leads to some other rumors. There's this one out there. Since FCC is built on Essbase, I should be able to plan inside of FCC. Okay, everyone, repeat after me. Thou shalt not plan in one's closed system. Thou shalt not plan in one's closed system. Thou shalt not plan in one's closed system. Anyone who says you should plan in the closed system doesn't actually own a planning system. Just like you wouldn't plan in HFM. Even if you could load a plan in HFM, God forbid you'd ever generate a plan inside of HFM. Just like you wouldn't what if in your general ledger, don't plan in your closed system. It's like a dog wearing people clothes. Sure, it's funny, but it's just wrong. FCC is purpose-built to be all about close control, statutory compliance. FCC is a consolidation and close application that you want remaining focused on consolidations. Think about it. When you're closing your books, you want to make sure that the number is 100% tie. You want to make sure that if you go back and look at that month, 12 months in the future, that number has not changed at all. It's all about structure and control. Think about your plan. It's all about what might happen. You want the planning numbers to constantly change. You want to be changing around your hierarchy. You want 14 alternate ways of looking at what that future is going to look like. So those technologies should be able to be seamless to the end user. So when I'm in it, if I'm looking at actuals, it's hitting a cube that is optimized for financial close. If I'm looking at planning in that same interface, I'm looking at a cube that's optimized for being forward-looking, optimized for planning, but don't plan in your closed system. The reason a lot of companies used to do this is because you had to pay for them separately. So you had to pay for FCCS separately from PBCS or ePBCS. Oracle has solved that problem by making the two of them for the price of one. So rather than have to go pay $500 a month for ePBCS and $500 a month for FCCS, in which case you're like, I don't want to pay for both of those. I just want to pay for FCCS. Now $500 a month gets you all of it. Get you planning, get you consolidation, get you all the other stuff too. Transaction matching, tax reporting, get you full freeform Essbase. If you want to build a 10 gigabyte cube, you can do that now. But just like you don't want to load that 10 gigabytes of data into your closed system, don't really want to load all that planning data into your closed system as well. So thou shalt not plan in one's closed system. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. I believe that was the motto of Jurassic Park. There are rumors going around that if I have EPMA and I have an EPM architected application that I can't move to 11.2. What do? We need a single place to go store those hierarchies. Does this mean we are stuck in 11.1.2.4? Is this Oracle's way of saying you must go to the cloud? Well, there is no EPMA in 11.1. I'm sorry, in 11.2. However, Oracle did something, in my mind, stunning. They took a very expensive product in data relationship management, and they're actually giving you a free copy of it. There's actually a one-step process to convert your old EPM architected applications over into DRM. You're basically converting them back to classic. So EPMA generates these ADS files, and you can take those ADS files and you can actually import them right into into DRM. Now, to be clear, it's limited use. It is contractual limited use. It is not software limited use. Be very careful you do not exceed what you are legally allowed to do. Basically, you're only allowed to use DRM to do what you were doing in EPMA. You're allowed to use it essentially to support your dimensions, run a bit of automation to go push those hierarchies out to the other applications. You are not allowed to go, wow, I have full use DRM. I'm going to make this my central hub for hierarchies for my entire company and feed those hierarchies to my general ledger and then feed them over to my data warehouse. And while I'm at it, I'm going to keep all my EPM applications on-prem and in cloud in sync. If you do that, you're going to get a call that's going to say the 11 most terrifying words in the English language. I'm from the Oracle audit department and I'm here to help. Don't do that. Be really, really aware. It is a limited copy, but the software won't stop you. You're just going to owe a whole lot of money if you go outside of it. You also have the option of going from EPMA if you own Oracle EPM Enterprise or if you own enterprise data management on the cloud, you can take and use that as your system of record for hierarchies. That could be your baby step up there into the cloud. So yeah, there is no EPMA in 11.2, but Oracle, in a shocking turn of events, gave us a better product. There are a couple of people I've met that actually have fondness in their hearts for EPMA. I think those may be the same people who have fondness in their hearts for COVIDs 1 through 18. You're right, COVID-19 is probably worse, but COVID's a bad idea. So don't go try and keeping your EPMA stuff as your main reason to stay on 11.1.2.4. Go to 11.2, figure out a way out of EPMA. Essbase 19C, it's not available yet. So there is no Essbase in the cloud. And this one, I don't know where this came. Actually, I do. It came from a certain planning company on the West Coast. They've been telling everyone, oh, Oracle killed Oracle Analytics Cloud Essbase, therefore Essbase is dead. So completely untrue. Essbase 19C was actually released last year in 2019. That's where the number came from, 19C. You don't have to go to Essbase 19C if you want Essbase in the cloud, though. You do have another option. If you own EPM Cloud Enterprise, you have Freeform Planning. All Freeform Planning means is you don't have any of the normal dimensions that planning requires. It's full-blown Essbase. You can do block storage. You can do aggregate storage. You can do hybrid cubes. There's no mandatory dimensions. You can build as small or as big a cube as you want, small or as much data as you want. There used to be a total size limit of 150 gigabytes. For all of your applications in Freeform Planning, that is gone. Compare that to Anaplan, where every time you go above a couple of gigabytes, you're backing up the Brinks truck. There is no limit on what that size ends up looking like. So if you have Oracle EPM Cloud Enterprise anyway, used Freeform Planning over on that side. It's also super nice having Oracle deal with your server issues instead of you. If you have hundreds of cubes, you don't want to go to Freeform. You're most likely then going to go to Essbase 19C, which, as I said, has been out for a full year at this point. It's stable. It really was just the next iteration of OAC Essbase. OAC Essbase, Glenn Schwartz is going to tell me I'm wrong on this, but I believe the last version was 12.2.2.1. The next version, if Essbase had stayed in OAC, was going to be Essbase 19C. It's just when it got moved over to the database department doesn't like really long, confusing version numbers. They just like calling it the year. So it jumped from 12.2.2.1 all the way to 19, but there was nothing between it. It was really meant to be a patch version. So anybody who says not out, yeah, totally out, completely busted. You've got Essbase 19C. Safe Harbor, there is version 21, and it's going to release probably in 2020. The reason they're calling it Essbase 21C, people go, oh, is it just because it's so close to 2021? No, it's because nobody wants to be associated with this year, ever. So if it does come out in the next couple of months, which is what we're expecting, Safe Harbor, it could always delay, it will be called Essbase 21C. It is the patched and enhanced version of 19C, and that version will be run anywhere. 19C only runs inside of Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. Essbase 21C, provided you have Linux 7, you can put it on anything you want. You can put it on-prem, on bare metal. You can put it in they're working on a Docker instance. You can put it on Amazon Web Services. You can put it on Azure. You can put it on OCI. So 19C, Oracle only. 21C, probably can run it anywhere. So I've heard this one. Freeform Planning and Essbase 19C are not exactly the same. I'm just going to go ahead and give you this one. This is true. Freeform applications, they kind of run inside the planning construct. They let you create cubes with any dimension combination you want. So that's why people think, oh, it's essentially the same thing as Essbase. You can create the dimensions that you choose. You're not having to be constrained or limited by those standard applications. You don't have to have the 6 standard dimensions. You can build your own hybrid cubes, your BSO cubes, your ASO cubes. You can access them from SmartView. But there's some cool stuff you get with Freeform Planning that you don't get with Essbase 19C. You get Groovy to do all of your custom functions, your business rules, your calculations, move data back and forth. You get the ability to have forms right out of the box on top of the Essbase cubes. You get the planning add-in to SmartView to go talk to all of these. You get the EPM dashboard 2.0. You don't get that with Essbase 19C. However, 19C is a newer version of Essbase than the Essbase that comes inside of Freeform Planning. For instance, it has an enhanced hybrid engine. It actually has even deeper integration with SmartView. There's a lot of integration that occurs on the data source platform. There are performance improvements. You get the new Jet UI, the way of maintaining your applications that in my mind is better than EAS. I still have fondness for Application Manager back in the day, but yeah, the new Jet UI is better. You get newest development tools. You also get things like CLI, Maxell. You get full REST API access to anything you'd ever want to do in Essbase. You get Essbase data sources. You get built-in Essbase drill through, built-in Essbase data loads, dimension builds, security filters, partitions. So each one has its own feature set. So just be aware there are some things that Freeform Planning does differently, like Freeform Planning right now is 1 cube per server, no partitions between them, but you get a lot of other stuff too. Essbase 19C, you get a lot of other stuff too. I heard this one recently. I'm already on EPBCS. Why should I go to the Enterprise Cloud Bundle? The Enterprise Cloud Bundle gives you access to all of the EPM products on Enterprise. On Standard, you're capped at kind of the big 4, but on Enterprise, you get access to anything. If you are not on Enterprise, do not renew your EPBCS license without seeing if you can convert it to Oracle EPM Enterprise Cloud. You're going to, even if you don't plan on using it right now, if you can get it for about the same price, think of what you could have access to. You could have access to financial consolidation and close, account reconciliation, enterprise data management, profitability, narrative reporting, which is an awesome way to have all that open dialogue. You get all of these tools, EDM, narrative, financial close planning, and you get it all for that same price. All you get with EPBCS is essentially what's over there on the left. You get workforce, projects, CapEx, and custom plan type, scenario modeling, and financials. When you go to Enterprise, though, you get features you didn't have, even in planning for EPBCS. Like you can't go create freeform Essbase cubes in EPBCS. You can in Oracle EPM Enterprise. You can't use a lot of the Groovy functionality. You can in EPM Enterprise. You can also borrow things, even if they're elsewhere on the diagram. So for instance, maybe you really don't like validating actuals inside of planning to make sure they equal the general ledger. I don't know, maybe you're one of those weird people that likes when you accidentally get your hand caught in a door or when the bottom of your bag rips out at the grocery store. Maybe you do like manually validating data. But let's say you don't. You can take account reconciliation, even though it's kind of listed on the financial close side, and you can use that to validate your data in and out of planning. So even if you don't care about close at all, I strongly, strongly recommend that you do move to EPM Enterprise. It changes how you think about things. It goes away from, for instance, saying, oh, I need to go write custom allocations inside of planning. Well, why can't I do those allocations over in profitability? I have access to it now. It's a tool that I have. Before I only had a hammer, but now I have this really cool jigsaw that comes with my toolkit. Why don't I go use that periodically to cut things out? Why don't I use the Dremel for this? Why don't I use the screwdriver for this? It changes how you report because now you can build those massive reporting cubes. It lets you be more flexible, make a planning cube that is designed just to do planning, and then you can go grab those other things like dimension management, account reconciliation, narrative reporting to enhance what it is you're doing. So if you're on EPBCS, even if all you care about is planning, I strongly encourage you to look at that Enterprise Cloud Bundle.
Hey, Edward, a question.
Yeah.
So I can get all of those individual things in the standard edition. Why would I want to go to Enterprise edition?
Good question. That's what you get in the standard edition. And that's what you get in the Enterprise edition. So in standard, first of all, in standard, you do have to pay to turn on other stuff. So even though account reconciliation, narration, close, and planning are all there, you have to pay to turn them on. Basically set up another instance. It's another $2,500 per month to go turn it on. But even if you turn those other things on, you don't get access to any of the purple stuff that's on your screen unless you are inside of Enterprise. One of the major game-changing things is Freeform Essbase. I love this, the ability to just build a big as cube as I want with whatever dimensionality I want. You do get that on the Enterprise side. That is an excellent question, Glenn Schwartzberg.
To me, it was the price thing that was the big deal.
Oh,
because I get unlimited cubes in Enterprise.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, yes. It's technically not just $2,500 for every additional app you want to turn on. It's also another $2,500 for every server you want to turn on. So if you want to have a test, a QA, a dev, a prod, and you want to have a disaster recovery, that's another $2,500 on standard. Enterprise, at least at the moment, and take advantage of this before Oracle changes their mind, it's unlimited servers. EPM Cloud users can add their own formulas and calculations into the cloud. You actually can. There are a series of different ways you can do this. I actually have a fun little demo showing how you could actually pull it up and you can go take a form, you can add your own members, and you can add your own user created formulas as part of the application. So if you, for instance, say, oh, I always want this account to be calculated by multiplying this number times this number, you don't have to have an admin do it. You don't have to write an Essbase member formula. If you know how to write an Excel formula, you now have the ability to actually do it. So from within Excel, you can use your Excel knowledge, you can save it and create a smart form. That form not only works when you pull it up inside of Excel, that same form works if you go pull that form up over on the web. So essentially you are becoming a web architect, and it gives end users the ability to go manage and drill down and add. Now I will caution you, end users can make mistakes. So if I actually let this whole demo play all the way out, which I'm not going to entirely in the interest of 15 minutes left, you'll actually see I make a mistake on my formula. I'm going to choose to believe I did that on purpose to show you what could happen, but I instead of dividing by 12 periods, I divide by 13 periods, and my numbers end up being slightly off. If you do that, there's a number that you want multiple people to be using, my advice, either limit this functionality to just a few power users, or have an admin do it, because you're going to make sure you get it right once and you have a single version of the truth that everybody gets to share in. But yeah, there's not a specific language. I can actually go out and say, F3 times F4 divided by 12, which I'm going to do correctly up here. I can do it down below. The key is when I save it as a smart form, and then it works everywhere. So yes, you can add it, but you don't necessarily want every user in your company deciding, I think profit would be better calculated like this. So have a level of auditing to the formulas. This just gets into the whole centralized versus decentralized discussion. But yeah, you can add your own formulas. It can be done by an end user, and you can save those back on the central server, at which point somebody can look and see if they actually make sense. The only migration path forward for native on-prem Essbase customers is to upgrade to Essbase 19c or Freeform Planning. Not true. We have Essbase 21c that is coming out, and it will allow us to upgrade our Essbase on-prem to 21c and stay on-prem. Also, and if you listen between the lines, even though there's not an Essbase 11.2, you can upgrade your Hyperion to 11.2. It still internally is using a version of Essbase 11.124, but if you're concerned, like I want to have access to more recent versions of, I don't know, Linux or other Excel versions or whatnot, you can upgrade to 11.2, and you get support on more recent versions. My data is not secure in the cloud, and if I migrate, I will lose control of the security of my applications. To be clear, companies that are heavily concerned about security are moving their stuff to the cloud. They're not staying on-prem. All those hacks that you hear about, the Sony hack, the WellPoint hack, the Experian hack, those are on-prem hacks. They're hacking those data centers. And in every single one of those cases, those companies like WellPoint, now Anthem, Sony, they rather rapidly moved everything to the cloud, because it is, at the end of the day, a better idea to have your software vendor maintaining your security than to have you maintaining that security. There are multiple security layers that are managed by Oracle. There are hundreds of people, I'm told thousands, but I'm going to go with hundreds of people whose sole job it is to go stop all those hackers that are attempting to get into the systems. And knock on wood, unlike Amazon Web Services, there's not been a hack that has succeeded over in the Oracle Cloud side. That's the security they're doing to make sure the hackers stay out. All the other security, things like single sign-on to your environment, being able to set up security and provision roles, determine what members people can see, what forms they can see, what reports they can see, that's still under your control. So you have the ability to customize that security, but Oracle maintains all the security at the actual server level. I'll tell you the number one thing that I didn't realize was happening in an on-prem world that just somehow went away in a cloud world. When there's a security hack that somebody has found, like a hole in the database software, Oracle, when they try and hack in, they'll kind of route them to another server so they can watch the hacker and see what they're doing. They call those, I think they're honeypots. They'll route them across, see what they're doing. Behind the scenes, they'll be writing a patch. Now, this happened in the on-prem world too, but they would issue those patches, and people wouldn't install them. Companies would go, we're inside of our firewall. We don't need to put in place all these critical security patches. So you'd see companies that were running versions that were years old and not patched. That doesn't happen in the cloud. The second Oracle determines, there's a potential vulnerability over here, it's patched and it's installed on the server before anyone ever even finds out about it. So yeah, if security is your big concern, I would strongly advise you to go to the cloud, not actually to stay on-prem. Unless, I don't know, maybe if your company's in the data center business, please, by all means, if you think you're better, keep doing it. There are some people that are concerned about like HIPAA 1, HIPAA 2, PPI, PII. There might be some constraints that your just company imposes on where you're allowed to put that data, but security as an overall concern is stronger in the cloud than it is on-prem. Cloud migration is challenging. I'm going to give you this one. You can't leap and hop your way up the learning curve. If you want to be truly successful, you have to earn the knowledge. Going along that journey is important to truly understand how the cloud actually works. I saw a statistic recently that said 55% of Oracle's on-prem customers by the end of 2021 will have moved 80% of their on-prem capability to Oracle Cloud applications. Why is it not 100%? Why are they only moving 80% of their stuff across? Why are some customers lagging back? How do we integrate that cloud security with on-prem? How do we get our IT department aboard? How do we get expertise in the cloud? How do we have people who are busy with their day jobs take time out to move things to the cloud? How can we change our governance procedures? How can we change our compliance? How can we make sure performance is good? In every one of those cases, it is a challenge, but it's a challenge that is completely overcomable. Every other company that has moved to the cloud has gone through these things, but it's not a matter of you just wake up one day and it's like, oh, that was cool. My server went away and I'm now in the cloud. I wouldn't have noticed if somebody hadn't told me. You are going to have some learning that you have to do. Myth 14. Don't worry, we only have like 3 more to go. You shouldn't migrate your DRM solutions to enterprise data management because enterprise data management is not ready yet. Is it ready? Yes, they took the 90% of the functionality that 90% of the people do 90% of the time, and that was in version 1 of EDM. So it is a centralized place to manage your dimensions, manage your hierarchy, manage your properties, manage your attributes. They didn't carry the old technology up to the cloud. It was built for a different time. DRM was built back in the days when you most likely had a single administrator for administering all of your hierarchies. And they tried to kind of after the fact add data relationship governance to try and give some workflow to the hierarchy process, but it was clearly an afterthought. They said, well, nowadays, everybody's going to want to add members. There's got to be some approval process for it. But we have to have a way to collaborate. We also have to have a way to make sure it's audited right out of the box, that we can have really granular security, that we can use data management so we can grab whatever mappings we need and bring those across. We should have direct interface, not an afterthought, to push to the EPM cloud applications. We have to have the ability to send to custom apps because it's not just an EPM tool. It's a tool for hierarchy management. All that is built in to enterprise data management. So notice I said what 90% of people do 90% of the time, 90% of that functionality is there. There are some things that people did, particularly some of the more esoteric data relationship governance things that are not there in enterprise data management. They really couldn't find a lot of companies using it. In a couple of cases, there's one specific company that I'm thinking of. It's a Fortune 50 company that was using a couple of those features. So they are going to add to EDM those couple of things they didn't think anybody was using until they got a call from that very specific Fortune 50 company and said, we'll move to EDM when you add these. But for the most part, it's not just ready for prime time. In a lot of cases, it's better, it's easier to administer. And then thank God, it actually looks like the rest of the stuff. So if you can administer and use planning on the cloud, you can administer and use enterprise data management on the cloud. Migrating to the cloud will be more costly and riskier than staying on-prem. I want to be clear, there's going to be an initial financial layout. and it's going to cost you money. I know of 2 companies that did this kind of on their own in their spare time. So it can be done without a financial investment, but just mentally assume you're not just going to take what you had and just export, import, and put it up on the cloud. You're probably going to rethink how you do planning for 2020. You're going to rethink how you do financial close. You're going to rethink how you do reporting and analysis. Doing that rethinking is going to cost money. However, over the long term, cloud services become much more cost effective. The benefits of migrating to the cloud far, far, far outweigh the risks. You're going to find that you no longer have to maintain a data center. By the way, that is so much freedom. You're going to find that all of your services are hosted and managed by somebody else. Also think about how often you have to and how often you should have been doing upgrades where you had to bring in somebody just to get you on the newest version. And you weren't probably doing it all on your regularly. So there's a bunch of stuff that was backed up and you had to move it all and you had to retest it, which made you want to move it out farther and farther. You get more current. It is actually less riskier, not just from a security standpoint, but from a feature, from a functionality, from a modernization standpoint to get over there to the cloud world. I was a little bit of a skeptic. I will freely admit that when PBCS came out in 2014, I was telling customers not to do it. I said I'm uncomfortable with the concept of putting financial information out there in the cloud. I became a believer right around early 2016, and now I'm an advocate for it. I really don't want to go back to the days of complex installs and systems that never get patched. I like new features just showing up. On that note, there are some people that go on both sides of this. There are people that say, Oracle EPM Cloud, it's more stable than servers I maintain myself because I never patch them. There are other people that say, my server is really stable because I never patch it. What do you mean Oracle applies patches twice a month? Well, the first patch, they apply to your test environments. They do that on the first Friday of each month. The second patch is the patch to production, and it's done on the third Friday of the month. The patches are actually tested by Oracle prior to application because Oracle is maintaining over 5,000 customer instances. That is not how they traditionally did patching. In the on-prem world, they would take a sample application, and whenever they tested something, like, it seems to work in our sample application, it seems to work on these other couple of operating systems. We only have a couple of them to test on, though. Let's release this patch to the wild and see how many customer servers it crashes. They don't have that anymore. What they now have is 5,000 plus, I've heard as many as 10,000, 5,000 plus customer instances that they can put that patch in place and say on their test environment and say, yeah, it works. It doesn't break anyone's application. Also, they released dribble patches. It used to be that when you jumped from version 7 of Hyperion to version 9 of Hyperion, it was like a completely brand new product that you had to deal with. Now these patches that are coming in twice a month are just fixing a security hole here, fixing a bug here, adding a new thing. It's like Gmail. Every time you go in, it just gets a little bit better. So I don't know why people think that unpatched servers are somehow more stable than regularly patched, fixed, corrected servers. I guess stable in the sense of if something is spelled wrong or if something doesn't work, it's always going to be spelled wrong. It's always not going to work in an on-prem world. So if stable by you mean unchanging, then yeah, I guess you could say your on-prem world is unchanging. Final myth, I think, because I think I stopped at 17. If we migrate to the cloud, we're going to have no control over the amount of data we can store. We're just somehow going to hit a 150 gigabyte limit, which is bigger than any other competitor out there. We're going to hit that 150 gigabyte limit, and I guess it'll just air out. So let's try and stay under that. Originally, they limited each instance to 150 gigabytes. Because so many people are under that, they actually have more space than they planned for. So they simply said, well, why are we going to cap everyone at that limit and be like Anaplan? Why don't we just give everybody as much storage as they want? So there's no longer a limitation. It's probably, there's not going to be a limitation until somebody shows up and abuses it. Like someone's going to copy their data warehouse up or something into a planning application or into a freeform planning cube. And then Oracle's going to go, hold the phone. But please don't ruin it for the rest of us, because I love that I don't have to care about data storage anymore. I can just copy whatever I want up there. I can focus on things like performance. You know what? I'll give you a bonus myth. Myth 18, we can troubleshoot issues within our own infrastructure without having to wait for Oracle support. Yeah, if there's a server-side issue, you don't have to troubleshoot it. Oracle is going to troubleshoot that. That's a good thing. You really don't want to be doing that. So I know this was a ton of information. I'm going to throw a couple more bonus myths into the overall recording that gets put out there. I will close with these awesome words. I know what you're thinking. How was I in MythBusters? But I reject your reality and substitute my own. Thank you, everybody. This is my final session at the conference. I'm extremely excited to see how many of you were here over the course of this week. People are already going like, are we going to do this again? This has been a ton of fun. We'll see. I think what this proves to everybody on the planet is that there is a very vibrant Oracle EPM community. Thank you, everybody. Hope you have an excellent rest of your conference.
Nice, Edward. There's one question I didn't get to if you want to answer it.
Sure, go for it. Can I say what it is out loud? Or?
Yeah, I'll read it to you. I think you've mentioned cloud more times than Larry would during his opening speech at Open World.
Awesome.
So I'm sitting with the feeling that if I'm going to 11.2 HFM, I'm just a rhino. So are there any things in 11.2 that you think are better or missing beside the discontinued products?
Aside from the discontinued products, I mean, there are a lot missing in 11.2. Like Hyperion Strategic Finance isn't even there in 11.2. So yeah, it's modules, it's EPMA, it's a lot of other things that aren't there in 11.2. Is there anything I think is better? Well, 11.2, there are a couple things that are better than 11.124. It does support additional operating systems. There are some bugs that are patched. There are some things where they did enhance performance in 11.2. There aren't features that are in 11.2 that you're not going to get in the cloud, but the other way is true. You're going to get a ton more features with financial consolidation on the cloud than you're going to get in 11.2 on-prem. Yeah, I joked about how Oracle can never make a sentence without saying cloud somewhere in it. And that's, I did the same thing during this presentation. I'm trying to show on-prem some love. If you want to put 11.2 in place, go for it. It's going to work at least until the end of this decade. Right now it's in support until December 2031, which is weird to say, and they're going to continue expanding it even further beyond that, probably another year or two out. So rhinos are awesome. I went to Africa just to go see one. So if I'm not saying we should get rid of rhinos, replace everything with, I don't know, hybrid, labradoodles, but be aware that there will come a time, and it is not a matter of if you're going to go to the cloud, it's a matter of when. As I said, I was an early adopter, but I was not on the bleeding edge. I was a skeptic for the first couple of years. So I am now a cloud advocate, and I think back to the days when we thought running data centers was somehow fun, and I'm really glad that's gone. So with that, I'll stop talking.
The only other thing that I'll add to that is that they were very specific about HFM. And if you do move to EPM Cloud, you are going to have to do a conversion, a migration. It's not a direct, just lift and shift up my HFM application into financial close and consolidation. You are going to have to do some design on it to make it work properly. So it's not a one-to-one move. So if you just wanted to keep it as HFM, then you're better off just migrating to 11.2.
Yeah, I will.
And then I'm going to add to that
this is awesome. Next speaker, Tracy, go ahead.
Yes. Because what I want to do, what I wanted to mention is you don't want to just move your HFM application over and migrate it over, because you likely have a lot of scripts going on behind the scenes where in FCC, they've written that for you, and it's out of the box functionality. So you're going to actually get kind of a new and improved application that's going to be easier to support. You get the new features. So you don't want to just move it over. You want to kind of rebuild in the new cloud framework and the new design and the go forward technology. Sorry.
Nope, that was an excellent add-in. Yes. To be clear, HFM was made in a different time. It was actually the world's first Sarbanes-Oxley compliant application. So it came out from 20 years ago, back in the financial scandals of the early 2000s. Fun fact, Hyperion Enterprise was not only not Sarbanes-Oxley compliant, it was actually the tool that Enron used to mess with their balance sheet and their off-book and non-consolidating entries. So Hyperion had a vested interest in fixing it with HFM. But back then, it was perceived there were like 25 people tops that were involved in the closed process. It was done as a centralized, consolidated thing, and then you would share your information with the masses when they were darn good. You were darn good and ready to give it to them. That's not the way we think about consolidation nowadays. We think about it as an ongoing process that happens throughout the month. We think about sharing that data with everybody across the board. Also, because of when it was created back in 2000, we all thought Microsoft was going to take over planet Earth, and that everybody would learn in like high school how to write VB script. So if you're wondering why it was so Microsoft centric, it's because Microsoft was on a plan towards global domination back in 2000. So they had to do a lot of rethinking to move it up to consolidation. One thing, or up into FCC. And one final thing I'll say on it, I'm extremely happy it has Essbase behind the scenes. HFM used a relational database, which is awesome for transactions. But that's not what you want out of your consolidation system. You want awesomeness at aggregations. You want it to aggregate really quickly. You want to be able to spin around and slice and dice and anything in the rows, anything in the columns as you go drill in and out of that data. So I'm really, really glad it's Essbase behind the scenes. That was, I'm over on time, so I will stop talking. We'll turn it over to the intermission music. And next up, you have Tracy and Stephanie, I think.